All right, guys, I did it. With the combined strength of my 2,000 watt home-built solar pergola and the Blue Eddy EP800 system that I installed back in January, I've had the best month of performance in home generation that I've had in 15 years. Now, for those that are unaware, in about April of 2009, I'd had a home 6,000 watt residential solar system installed at my home, and I've been using it trouble-free this entire time, but I've never really been a net surplus. I've always been just offsetting my needs a little bit. Now, no small part is that because my utility company, SRP, Salt River Project, does do its billing and its credits a little bit strange for me. But currently I'm making about 4,400 watts. Just a little bit in the afternoon in May. But like I alluded to at the very beginning of the video, my 2,000 watt primitive solar pergola. And so with that solar pergola that I built, I'm able to power shift or store that power that I'm making during the day in these batteries and use them in my house at night. I have 4 B500 5,000 watt hour batteries in here for about 20 kilowatt hours of battery power. And that's called power shifting, which means I get to save that power that I'm making during the day. I get to save it and use it at night where it's cheaper for me. And that also means my grid-tied home solar system, all the power it's making is actually being sent back through the grid and very likely to my neighbor's house right there. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean all the power that it's making is going back to the grid in the neighborhood, as my disaster pool, which runs off 220 volt, driven by this great big huge overpowered pump right there, and my central AC, which is also 240 volt, is powered up by the grid-tied solar. But if you followed along in this series about the EP800 installation, that unit is actually powering the rest of my house when it comes to 120 volt connections. For the home lighting, 110 outlets, and even my freezer and refrigerator. Because if you remember when we hooked this thing up back in January, I said the reason why I was selected was because I have about 15 years of history with grid-tied solar already, so I already know my power use when it comes to my house. So let's go check the numbers. If we go to my utility online portal here, we can see that from April 1st to May 11th, almost every single day I've made a surplus of power, with the exception of those 2 days. It looks like April 24th and a few days here where those were cloudy days for sure. But otherwise, I've made an excess of power for almost a month and a half thanks to that little 2,000 watt array I built. If we were to change this from 2024 to 2023 and apply that, let's see the difference. Only had a few days here where I was in a little bit of a surplus. Otherwise, I was using a lot more power than I was creating. See, if I go to generation, you can see every day I'm pretty even in 2023 between 39, well, we'll call it 35 kilowatt hours to my high of about 39 kilowatt hours. If we go back to 2024, remember, it's only checking on the grid-tied solar, not the little 2,000 watt array that I built. And we go to generation. If anything, I may not have generated as much as the year before. So yeah, it looks like that little 2,000 watt array that I put in with the EP800 has caused some significant improvements in my energy use. You can see energy use right here hasn't changed in 2024 compared to 2023. And I got this 2,000 watt array installed in about the beginning of April there. Yeah, pretty much identical power uses right there. You might notice I have a $25 bill. That's just a connection fee. That's actually cheaper than it normally is. Normally it's $40, but that's how much excess power I've created that it's affected my connection fee. I'm not even struggling to save power when I'm at home at all. If anything, I didn't even show you guys, I installed this window AC unit, and I've been running this pretty much all day once I'm in a power surplus like I am currently, and I can keep my entire bedroom and bathroom as cold as I want it to be all through the night, and the battery never goes dead. And while I don't have a huge history of power outages in this house, My central AC unit did finally break on me 2 years ago at the beginning of June. And if I would have just had that window unit in my bedroom, I wouldn't have had to rush around so very quickly to get a new AC unit that I probably wasted a couple $1,000s I didn't have to waste because I didn't have time, because Arizona heat and summer is not something you want to play around with. And it was just beginning of summer. The worst thing about window AC units is that they don't look very good on the outside. However, one of the best things about them is that they're incredibly efficient and quiet. I have the AC running right now. I have the LED turned off because it's pretty bright at night. And right now, we're drawing about 1100 watts, right? Now if I were to just come right here, turn the AC unit off, we're already down to, we're calling it 400 and, even about 400 watts. So it was using about 700 watts, 800 watts. Now technically speaking, with that 20,000 watt hour battery bank in the garage down below, I can run this window unit at 800 watts for about 25 hours straight. A little over a day, right? But if we look at it right now, that 2,000 watt array that I hooked up to the EP800 is producing about 17 kilowatts right now. So that means I could run the window unit all day, get the room as cold as I want, and pre-charge the room and keep it cold during the night without even using half of the battery. I'm making a surplus of power right now. If I'm not using it, I am technically losing it. I might as well just make this room as cold as I want it to be. But I also can tell you this much. I've been doing a lot of solar here lately, and I just recently figured out how much a little bit of shade does reduce the performance of solar panels. And so what I was finding was, even though we're right in the middle of peak producing summertime sunlight, my little cypress tree right there, because it was so tall, was casting so much morning shade just on a little bit of segment of the panel or the array right there. It wasn't really turning on until about 10 o'clock in the morning. So I gave it a haircut, and of course I had to cut the other ones to match. And so with about 6 feet off the tops of all those cypress trees, the EP800 has been able to start producing power even earlier in the day for me. Now the last graph I will show you is going to be the energy production using this solar pergola with the EP800. Go back into the system right here, and I go to my energy statistics. Currently I've made 7.1 kilowatt hours just today. Now the day before I made 12.3, the day before that was 12.7, 12.9, and 12.3. And we can see within the lifetime of this 2,000 watt little array that I've created, which is only about a month and a half it's been running, I've made an excess of 684 kilowatt hours. So to say I've had a lot of fun, I've been very impressed with the EP800 would be a giant understatement. But I do have something of an RV channel, and even though I have an awful lot on my garage wall right here, I think there's room for one more item. Because even though I've showed you that it handles 120 volt loads no problem, this is set up and capable of running 240 volts. And I think right down here, I can get my electrician Jason with Goldfield Mountain Electric to install this temporary 50 amp RV plug. So I'm going to go ahead and get this installed, and if that works, I have one more test I want to throw at it before we call it a... I have one more test I want to throw at it before we call the VV. I have one more test I want to throw at it before we say the EP800 has been through all the testing I feel capable of doing. All right, so Jason with Goldfield Mountain was able to come back and install this is a 240 volt 50 amp outlet. So if I were to take my leads right here and go from neutral, which is the middle, to one of the lines on the side, we have 120 volts. But if I go to line right there, we have 240 volts, and we are inverting off the Blue Eddy currently. So I'm going to go run down to the shop, get some perfect test equipment to try out this outlet, and I'll be right back. Now I'm sure many of you will be very familiar with my 2001 Beaver Patriot Thunder. Now this is equipped with 50 amp service for RVs, which is, just like we discussed, which is a 50 amp 240 volt system. And I think if there's anything that's going to test out this EP800 for its maximum capacity, It's going to be a 50 amp diesel luxury motorhome. Now I'll go ahead and trip the breaker right there so I can plug it in. Okay. Now I haven't turned the breaker on yet, but now the EP800 means that it's kind of rated at about 8,000 watts or 8 kilowatts of power. It's a little bit below that, I think 7,900 watts, but who cares? We're all just rounding it up anyways. As you might be aware, my motorhome does have a diesel generator on it, and it's rated at 7,500 watts, which is actually a little bit less capacity than the EP800. Now, pretty much within reason, I can run everything within the motorhome off the diesel generator right there. So I should be able to run everything off the EP800 with no hesitation. Now, I haven't plugged this in yet, but if I go to AC leg 1, 0, AC leg 2, nothing. And if I go to the voltage coming in on leg 1, I don't have anything. Voltage on leg 2, I don't have anything coming in. Okay, so currently we're making about 1,000 watts off of solar. Looks like maybe my refrigerator's on, but I haven't turned on the breaker here yet. Let me go ahead and turn that breaker on. It's in the on position. And let's see if we get power inside. We walk inside here. So it does say AC voltage leg 124 volts, 123 volts, leg 1, 0 amps of current, leg 2, 0 amps of current. So we're float charging because I have pretty good solar on this, right? So we're not even really using any power yet. We do have the microwave here. I could theoretically turn the microwave on, but that's kind of a pain. Let's go ahead and turn on that refrigerator there. And we did just bump it up to our usage right there. Okay. So of course the most important thing is, will the roof ACs work? I do not have any soft starts on my ACs yet. It's on my list of things to do, but nothing yet. Go ahead and put this to cool. Set the temperature. And let's see what we got going on here. Alright, so the fan did just turn on. Alright, looks like the compressor just kicked on. Alright. So if we were to go to current on leg 1, it's pulling 13 amps. And we got 2,400 watts being used right now. Now I know it's difficult for you guys to believe me, but this is very cold air coming out. I also do have a pretty quiet roof AC unit. It's a high quality RV that I bought, okay? I keep saying that, but so we have one AC running and the refrigerator running. And we're making 1,000 watts with the solar pergola, but we're using 2,500 watts. The rest of it's coming from the battery right now. So we are discharging the battery, but technically we're off grid, doing a hybrid system with solar and battery taking over the entire load. Let's go try the bedroom AC. Alright, so it says 108 degrees in here, and I believe it. Turn it on cool. Set point there. Alright, so that fan just kicked on. I think I just heard the compressor kick on. Look at that, we're at 4,000 watts we're using. So we have 2 AC units and the refrigerator going. Now again, you'll have to take my word on it, but the AC is cold, so we are running pretty good power here. And if I come over here, AC current on leg 1 is 14 amps, on leg 2 is 13 amps. Now remember, we're really not using anything off the charger because my solar on the roof is taking up all the 12 volt load. Since the solar is going to do more than enough to keep my batteries topped up and the 12 volt going, there's no reason to use the inverted battery power from the EP800 to turn into 110 power for the inverter in the RV to turn back into 12 volt power. There's a lot of inefficiencies in the voltage conversion on that. So using the solar that's built into the RV to power up to 12 volt is what I would do. Now I won't deny that probably those 4 batteries won't last too long. If we're using 4.3 kilowatts after an hour of running that, that's almost going to kill one battery bank because they're about 5 kilowatt hours in them. So that means I could run 5,000 watts for 1 hour, and this is just under 5,000 watts. Don't forget the refrigerator is on. This one's an older refrigerator. It's quite inefficient, but we might as well try and make sure, because we haven't used everything yet. If we were to put it on convection and bake it at, let's see. All right, so now we're gonna be, sorry about the bake time, we need a lot more bake time than that. So with the convection oven microwave heating up, now we're up to 6,100 or 6.1 kilowatts that we're using. And this is all running off of the Bluetti EP800. So theoretically, I could just have my RV plugged in at my house if the HOA allowed it, and I could run it off the solar pergola all day if I wanted to, at least one AC unit, without using any of the battery from the batteries themselves, just using the solar pergola and the charge controller, and that would work. Now I can't deny the HOA really wouldn't like me sticking out inside of the street right here, and tomorrow is garbage day, so I can't do this much longer. Now, why would you want to be able to do something like this? Well, don't forget, my grid-tied solar right here, if I were to put a 50 amp breaker just underneath right here and run the RV off of it, sure, I could do that, but if the neighborhood was to lose power, my grid-tied solar does not work unless there is incoming city power or municipal power. Whereas in an emergency, the Bluetti EP800 is truly a self-contained emergency power backup UPS system. So even in an emergency, if there was no city power or shore power coming in, the EP800 would take over. I'm not backfeeding to the grid, so I'm not endangering the line workers on the utilities itself. I have the solar generator creating its own power, powering this whole thing up, completely independent from the city. And while we're pulling about 6,000 watts of inverted power right here, I can barely hear the fan running. I can feel a little bit of heat coming out of it, but that's about it. I didn't have to do anything, and you saw how hot it was inside the RV. Do I think I'll be using the EP800 for emergency power use on an RV? Probably not very often, but it is nice to have it. And even if I did have an issue with this, I could just as easily, using the Reliance sub panel that Bluetti supplies with the EP800, bring it back to city connection right there. Powers up all of this, including the 50 amp outlet, right from the utility source on the other side. Right over here off of the main breaker here. And we covered that in the installation video. So while I may not ever personally use this for an emergency backup power for a RV or travel trailer in my driveway, it is a possibility that I could have an RV set up here as a trailer in the driveway, be able to power it up. In an emergency, power up the window AC in my bedroom, completely off grid, charging it or running it off the solar pergola on the outside. Right there. And of course, if I had more efficient panels, it would do even better. Remember, my system's about 2,000 watts, which is pretty good for a travel trailer or an RV, but it's horrible for residential off-grid use, especially for the size of that array. So I've been running it for a little bit right here, and I haven't had any problems with the system operating. My roof ACs did not even hesitate to turn on, so they did not require a soft start. They're still in here running. We got 17 amps pulling on leg 2 and 16 on leg 1. I can go ahead and turn that off. Yeah, it is hot in there, that's for sure. Let's put my safety strap back on. All right, so service light. We see right here, my production has dropped down substantially because we're getting pretty late in the day now. We're still pulling 4.5 kilowatts or 4,500 watts. And we're down to 89% on the battery. And now if I come to the current, leg 1 has 16, leg 2 has 16. So this is the first time I've been able to try the Bluetti out with an RV hookup. Let me go back to here, turn that one off, and I'll go ahead and turn off the front AC. Oh, that's nice and cold. So that was kind of a fun little test to run on an RV. Now I know what some people might be saying. Yeah, James, that's pretty interesting, but I don't have an RV. I don't ever intend to have an RV, so let's put a different load up to it and see if it works 240 on that too. And what could be a more substantial load? An electric car. Now, this is my 2011 Nissan Leaf. See right there, I'm pretty low on battery mileage. There's a charge over there, and I'm missing a few segments over here on the battery condition. Now, this is the first generation Nissan Leaf and first mass-produced all-electric vehicle. And it came with a pretty crummy battery, but it did get replaced by the factory with the Lizard battery, which has a battery capacity, I think, about 26 kilowatt hours originally. Now, it's kind of impressive when you think about it, that those 4 batteries right there is about 20 kilowatt hours, while the battery on this vehicle is about 26 kilowatt hours. So only about one more module is fit inside this Nissan Leaf. Now, obviously, it's very inefficient to charge an electric vehicle with batteries, but it could be done. And most of these electric vehicles don't really like the power that comes from these solar generators. Now, obviously, I have my grid-tied car charger, which is 220 or 240, and it'll charge up the battery in about 3 or 4 hours. Like I said in the previous test, the grid-tied solar right there is what's powering up the car charger over here. Unless I have city power coming in, I can't charge up the electric car with the solar that's from the residential grid-tied solar. Now, this car is kind of the reason why I did put solar on. Even right now, we're making 2,000 watts of solar, so technically most of the power that it's making is going to be dumped into the car right here. It's still free power for me. And because the grid-tied solar does not have any power banking on it, I can't do any power shifting. So I'd have to make sure I set the timer on the car to only charge during the day, during off-grid time or off-peak times, which I always found a hassle. So that's why I never changed any of the billing that comes in from my utility. But with the Bluetti, because I do have that 2,000 watt solar array, I could do some power shift. Now, the most obvious one that I touched on a previous video is that most electric vehicles will come with the emergency charging connection here. Now, it just takes a standard 110 or 120 volt 15 amp outlet from house power. And remember how I said that this will charge up my battery in about 3 or 4 hours? This, as the battery currently is, it says at 120 volts, it would take about 9.5 hours to charge from this point. And if we were plugged into 240, 3.5 hours. So big difference between the two of them. So my first test I want to do is to even see if the car will charge with inverted power from the Bluetti EP800 just on a 15 amp outlet. So currently we are drawing about 620 watts. So if I go ahead and plug this in, listen for the second beep. There's the second beep. And let's see if it starts kicking up. There we go, we're ramping up. Not too bad. Now don't pay attention to the grid coming in. There's no grid coming in. Sometimes there's just a glitch in the app when it does that. So it's pulling about 2,000 watts now. 500 from the solar array and about 1,500 watts from the battery. Again, like I said, that is a very inefficient use of power, but this is all free power that's in the battery bank over here. So it's not that inefficient. It's just collected sunlight that I'm putting from that battery bank into this battery bank here. So that's all well and good. What if we could plug in a 220 outlet to the Bluetti EP800? And you know what? A few years ago, I did get an adapter so I could do this. I've always thought that the Nissan Leaf would be a perfect dinghy for RV motorhomes because it has the range that you need in an RV park. No maintenance that you have to ever do on it, and if you get the right adapter that has a 50 amp RV plug on it. You could, at RV parks, theoretically, charge up your electric vehicle using power from the RV outlet. It's working. So let's see, this smart charger, looks like I have it charging. Oh, look at that, we're pulling 32 amps right now. Let's see what the Blue Eddy says. All right, so we're pulling about 4,400 watts right now from the Blue Eddy, using a little bit of solar and the rest from the batteries, just using the 240 or 220 plug-in that I just installed over here for RV use. And it's working. This is the first time I've ever seen this work. I've tried it with a number of different solar generators and it hasn't worked. Now I seriously doubt I'm going to leave this plugged in all night just to test that thing out. But that does mean my 2,000 watt solar pergola could charge up my electric car in the middle of the day. I can change the settings from the Blue Eddy EP800 to have a maximum discharge rate, so I would never be using the battery's power, and we'd just be using the solar power itself. There's a lot of options right here, and of course that means I have limitless gasoline or power for my car, even in an emergency situation, even if there's no power to the neighborhood, to the house, or some other emergency situation. I have reliable transportation. However, it's not very good range. I probably have only about 50 miles of range. Maybe a little bit more if I don't turn the AC on. But what I will do is I will leave this plugged in and charging while I take the RV back to the shop, just to ensure that all that power draining doesn't cause any damage or cause it to overheat in the heat. I've never ran 4,000 watts off the inverter capability of the Blue Eddy before. But I can say we've had this installed since about January. So this is the middle of May. We have about 5 months of basically trouble-free operation. While I do have the boxes saved in case I do have to send it back for any sort of repairs. So far I have not had any reason to even contact Blue Eddy for any problems with the operation of the system. There's been some issues I've had, but I've been able to work them through myself. I will probably cover some of those issues in my follow-up video to this video. But thanks again for watching, guys. This has been quite the fun, if not exhausting, project that I've been able to put together from Blue Eddy using the EP800. Well, I can't ever say I imagine having this many components that looks like a spaceship in my garage. I can safely say that I've always wanted to have one less bill in my life and one less responsibility, which is why I got the grid-tied solar to begin with. Why I built this 2,000 watt solar pergola, which not only gives my dogs a little bit of shade, it's actually done a very good job reducing the solar heat gain on my kitchen right there, my pantry, which is right about there. During the summer, I have to make sure I leave the door open, otherwise this gets incredibly hot and anything that might be chocolate would probably melt. And I haven't had that problem ever since I put the pergola up. I hope there's been enough exhaustive hands-on sort of testing of the system. I'm not an engineer. I have a very limited knowledge about solar, off-grid, and electrical system. I've been trying to use it however I think I would use it if it was mine. If you guys have any questions or think that maybe I didn't do anything right, don't hesitate to put it in the comments. I'll read them. I'll try to answer. Sometimes I might give you a little bit of snarky reply, but it's just because I'm a little bit snarky. But thanks a lot for watching, guys. Trouble-free operation on 240 for the EP800. And I've had the best performing month I've ever had with my power use in my house in the last 15 years, using it in conjunction with my 2,000 watt solar pergola. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Bye. And then, because I know everybody's going to want to know, this was a worker's bee that I picked up online. I haven't even operated it before. Portable EV user charger guide. It's worked really well. There's the instructions. I didn't even read them. Strange to think that golf carts cost more than this leaf. Alright, it's a lot darker now. My car is no longer charging. The lights aren't flashing up on top right there. And it's not really pulling anything as far as wattage goes, so I think the car is charged. Go ahead. ahead and unplug it here. Let's see what the car is going to tell me. Well, it's reading fully charged. All those segments, you can see I'm missing some important battery indicators over on this side here. But it is fully charged. I got about 55 miles of range, just like I said I have. But how much battery is remaining on the EP800 after charging up the vehicle? Well, it's a few hours later here, 10:16. It looks like we're down to 21%, and I think a few lights are on inside, and the bedroom AC is on. Now, while 20% is still not a lot of battery remaining on the Bluetti EP800, I can tell you, generally if it's at 20% when I get up in the morning, the solar pergola still will charge this thing up by the end of the day. But I don't think I'll have that much remaining if I leave the AC on all night. So it was a good test. Now we all know the answer. Thanks for following along and watching till the end.